very much. Thank you for attending this press conference. I think we should start by, as we did earlier in the week, and I want to repeat that welcome to the two shows who are here in Georgetown at the conference, the annual conference, to discuss development issues for their communities. And I hope, in fact, I had hoped that the agenda would be such that would address the many concerns we have heard from the communities when we visited them, and also in our meeting with the NTC, the National Two Shows Council, a few weeks ago. From the feedback I got, it's the same old platitudes that they're receiving from the government, lengthy presentations without any commitment to actual policies or resources that will make a difference in the lives of people or people who live in the hinterland and riverine communities. And so I just wanted, because I've seen a video circulating based on, and within the video they have comments from the chair of the NTC. So I just wanted to share, without getting into a proving story, I wanted to share our approach on the entire issue. It's very misleading to say that on Monday, we in the People's Progressive Party, we were sharing some invitations to the two show to attend a reception here at the office of the Leader of the Opposition. We followed a process, and I just want to spend a moment outlining that process. I have here a letter addressed to the chair of the NTC, dated Wednesday, the 2nd of October. And the letter says, it was signed by Pauline Sukai, who is a member of Parliament, and one of the paragraphs of this letter says, "We would therefore appreciate if the NTC could suggest to us an appropriate day and time, preferably in the evening, for such a meeting reception." It was a request for time to meet with the two shows. And this was sent long before the conference even started. So we got a feedback from the NTC that Monday evening will be free. In fact, we looked at the agenda, and Monday evening had no activity planned. And so we went ahead, planned our activities, issued the invitations, and then to our surprise, on Monday we heard that the president, or Mr. Granger, had an activity on the same evening. So his activity had to be planned on the very day. And obviously after they saw that we were meeting with the two shows in the evening, they hurriedly put together that activity and called it a presidential reception. And I believe that the NTC was prevailed upon to get people to go to his reception instead of coming here. So this excuse about because we disrespected the president, then people should go to his reception, it sounds very hollow. Mr. Granger doesn't respect the Constitution of Guyana, doesn't respect the rule of law. And, there is a sound. Yeah, before you get it on your microphone. Right. So he doesn't respect the rule of law. And therefore, I don't think respect has to be earned. The mere fact that we had members from our side attending the meeting is because we wanted to pay respect to the two shows and the NTC. We didn't go there for Granger's speech. We went there out of respect for the NTC. And so our people are not obligated to show respect to any person merely because he holds an office, which we believe now he holds illegally, that office, in contravention of the Constitution. And therefore, when I saw a link between some of our members who attended not standing for Granger, and therefore people must go to his reception, I think it was stretching it. I think the NTC was prevailed upon to do that. So they extended the session and took many of the two shows directly, who thought they were going in the buses to go back to the hotel. They were ferried to the State House. But notwithstanding all of that, many of the two shows defied the attempt to ferry them en bloc to the State House, and they attended here. And we had more than half of the members of the elected members of the NTC who attended the reception here in defiance of a directive basically to go to the State House because people cherish their freedom and free will. And so I hope that that puts into context what we have seen as APNU propaganda. They're clipping little bits of it as though we are obligated to respect Granger when he disrespects this whole country, our Constitution, the court decisions, rule of law. He walks all over these documents as though they don't exist, and then they expect us to accord him great respect, to roll out carpets and treat him as though, as I said before, he's the queen, a ceremonial leader. So at the meeting itself, and prior to this meeting that we had with the two shows, the reception, many issues came up. And the two shows spoke about the significant neglect of their communities, the broken promises. And I don't want to repeat all of those, but you know what they are. On land titling issues, on free prior informed consent, on development, on infrastructure, even the projects on employment, and the projects that they say they're funding in the community. By now, we should have had, if you listen to Garrido Low, some 2,000 projects, over 2,000 projects, that is business projects funded in the Amerindian communities. They have either not seen these projects, or when the projects are implemented, significant sums of money have been siphoned off from the projects. So the leaders are very much aware of this. And that's why I said to them, we gave them a package of information, and I said to them, before they leave Georgetown, they will have an agenda for a national development conference that we would have in April of next year, after the elections. I'm assuming that the PPP will win those elections, and that we have already drafted an agenda. Our presidential candidates spoke to them about the elements of that agenda here at the meeting that we had with the two shows. And key among these, you would see it's a comprehensive agenda. It speaks about economic development and job creation. Oil and gas, we need to clarify the position that Amerindians have to benefit as much as any other group of persons in Guyana from the proceeds of oil and gas. You'd recall, and this needs clarity because of that statement made by Keith Scott in Parliament when he said that if Amerindians are avaricious, if they get more land, they must not benefit from the oil and gas sector. This is a minister of the government in the National Assembly saying that Amerindians must not benefit from oil and gas proceeds because they're too greedy, they want more land. Until now, the government has not repudiated that statement. So the conference will discuss specifically about that. It will discuss the resumption of land titling activities and timelines for both titling lands as well as for processing extension. It would address the healthcare, for example, supply of drugs, medical personnel, etc., upgrading the facilities in these communities. It would address education issues because many of them have complained that they don't have teachers in the schools. The nutrition program that we started has not been extended to other communities, the hot meal program, etc. All of the other things. We have a comprehensive agenda here, which we've already drafted for that conference that will take place next year, but with very specific outcomes. So it's not just an agenda to like just make speeches about, like what's happening now. When you have nothing to say, you go and make these general speeches. We have an agenda that you will, once we get it out to the two shows tomorrow, we'll share it with the media. So this is the agenda for the conference in April, the development conference in April. I've noticed something like, to give you an example of the nonsense that goes on to fill the time that the two shows are here. When they want to talk about jobs and land title and water and how they get more access to resources and cost of living, etc. So we had Tamara Khan, who is, I gather, the wife of the head of the DPI, both working out of the office of the Prime Minister, and she made a presentation to the two shows. And so one of the things she said to the two shows, and the nepotism is unbelievable in that ministry. Unbelievable. All of their cronies and minions and everyone else, anyone else, the Flotsams, the Jetsams from the AFC, they're all ensconced in the Chronicle and state media and other places, pulling down big perks. That is the level of nepotism in that ministry. But her presentation says she's explaining to the two shows what is the Constitution. That's one of the topics. And the next one, why do we need a Constitution? Imagine these are leaders of their communities. That's what, it must be the Chronicle that has this. But this is what she goes to explain to the two shows. She should say why Granger has been violating the Constitution. That you can have the best document in the world, but if you don't have honest people, people with integrity who respect the Constitution, then you would end up in situations like what we have now, today, where there's a total disregard of the Constitution. So that is the kind of nonsense. And then a promise that they will consult with people in the future for constitutional reform. You recall this was one of their key platforms in the 2014-2015 elections, that immediately they will have constitutional reform. Now they're going to consult in the future about constitutional reform. So this is the sort of thing. You have many such presentations. The two shows told me when they raise issues about land matters, they're told, oh, we know where that you have applied, we don't have the file as yet, we have to go and check it, etc. But simply because they don't want to do it, in spite of all the promises to the contrary. So there'll be no development in these communities, just ministers flying in, spending millions of dollars flying in with tons of security, hiring huge number of aircraft, followed by an entourage of APNU supporters, and then they go to the community, eat up the people's food, will bring in no development in that area. That is what we can continue to expect, and a lot of promises. The next, I'm trying to focus a bit today on policy issues. So a lot of this here and the agenda has to deal with a ton of policies, and we'd release it for the hinterland development because we're trying to shift the conversation more and more to plans for the future, specific plans. We don't want people to think that we're like this group that said 2015 we have a plan, and they come in now and they don't have a plan for anything. And anytime you ask them, they're still working on it, but they would never achieve it. We want to show people that we have specific plans for every sector, not general thought. So that's one issue. This brings me to the next point about education. So, two things they've touted about Mr. Granger. One, that he likes the green economy, and last week I think I dealt with the LCDS and how specific it was and its advantage over this so-called green state economy, which is a document drafted by a foreign consultant with no specific plans, projects, programs to be implemented, and will cost the taxpayers money when the LCDS was earning people money. I dealt with that last week. And so you can see that this green state, this so-called green state economy that he speaks about all the time, has no basis in reality and will make not a single difference in the lives of people. Our LCDS was going to generate clean energy, green energy, reduce the cost of energy. It would have generated thousands of green jobs for people, thousands of green jobs for people. It would have addressed the infrastructure that we need to ensure that the ravages of climate change don't affect people. It would have created new exports, etc. That was the nature of the LCDS. And I don't want to go over it again. So the next big thing that he speaks about education. He's the education president. And the facts are different than his public statements. What his government has done, as so often is the case, has contradicted this view that he still believes, he's the only one who believes it, that he is pushing education, or education is a priority of his government. So we started off by, you recall, removing the grant from the school kids. He started off, which by now would have put $8 billion in the pockets of the parents or these children. $8 billion, 5 years multiplied by 1.6 billion. Because they passed 5 budgets and they eliminated that. So if you multiply 1.6 by 5, you will get over $8 billion. That's what they took away from school kids. He replaced that with this PETS thing, and he speaks about it at his rally in Linden, etc. That's his big initiative, with a few buses donated. And even in the donation process, we don't know whether they were donated to the PNC, whether they're donated to the government, because if they're donated to the government, they should not be handed out the way they're handled, the way they're being handled. but we don't know if they're in the asset register of the government or in PNC's ownership, because these were donated at party events. Secondly, some of the buses donated, you look at the Auditor General's report, that we've spent $20 million on maintenance of one of these buses, and more than the cost of the bus, millions of dollars on these buses that are donated. People want to get into their good books, they buy an old bus, hand it over. So that, the stuff is that could never replace the $8 billion that you took away from the school kids. Then, number 3, what did he do? He put the value-added tax on education. It was only after public outcry, and a fight on our part that it was removed again, but that betrayed his intention. He talked about university education. We have him promising that within 1 year of graduation, you will get a job in the government. The government will find you a job. That was one of his 2014 promises. That he failed on that too. He failed on the fees at university. That increased by over 35%. So the nutrition program has not been extended. In fact, it's been cut back in many areas. The school uniform project for the hinterland, many people didn't get it. So this is the guy who says education is my top priority. That's my top priority. And his government's policies have moved, in fact, to harm the education sector. So, have harmed the education sector. So, our presidential candidate has outlined clearly how we are going to approach this sector. And we have set ourselves, I think I repeated it, I said this elsewhere, but it warrants a repeat. Because when you contrast this with what Granger says at the rally, etc., oh, I want every child in school. And, you know, we want to make university education free. You will see that there is no strategic thinking behind it. It's just like mouthing off slogans. So our approach is to ensure that access at every level, universal access at every level, from nursery to university. The second objective is to improve quality at every level. The third objective has to do with preparing people for the labor market. So at the tertiary level and at the TechVoc level, to reorient the programs there so Guyanese can be prepared for the job market. These are the 3 primary objectives of our education strategy. And then we said it must be affordable to everyone. So consistent with making it affordable to everyone, there are various sectors. So public, or consistent with these 3 objectives, in public education, we have to improve facilities across Guyana. We have to offer incentives to teachers and opportunities for training and skill development, and including remuneration, conditions of service. We've said there will be curriculum reform, etc. So that is in terms of improving quality. In terms of access, we have promised 20,000 online scholarships. That will expand access enormously across the country. And then in terms of affordability, public schools, we have to ensure that no child has to buy a textbook in the future, that the state must provide all the textbooks, that the parents must not pay hidden fees, that every time you have a child, you have to pay fees for almost everything in the school system. That must be eliminated, that the state must carry those costs, that for private education at every level, from nursery to university, we're going to remove the corporate tax from them, so they don't have to pay the corporate tax. And then, so if you have a private school now at the nursery level, or you're offering university education from the private sector, you don't have to pay corporate tax. So that means you can keep the programs affordable for kids who are going to private institutions. So it's not only the public sector. And so there are lots of, an entire strategy that we have worked on that will be revealed in the manifesto. But it is not the one word that Granger says, oh, I want every child in school. Well, most of them are already in school, but how do we help? You can't increase the cost of living for their parents and remove the sustenance or the help that the state gives and then want them to be in school. You have to have consistency, internal consistency in policy. So I noticed that that's where on another policy issue, on the education sector, they're just as vague as 2015. He's just as vague, and he got away then with a lot of promises being vague. But you've been in government, this is your 5th year in government now, and you can't come with this vague sort of nonsense again and expect people to believe you. You see no thought or no policy making behind his proposal. So the third issue, the one that keeps popping up all the time, is this cash grant again. And I saw it has generated quite a bit of controversy. So last week I spoke about this matter, and I laid out what theoretically happens in many countries, that there are different models. And speaking about model, I hope that Demerara Wave would adjust this. There is no WPA model. Cash transfers have been taking place in government since time immemorial. There is no WPA model. There is a WPA proposal on the table which has been found to be technically unsound, because even Clive Thomas himself said that to make it successful, you have to get up to 1.5 million barrels a day. That's not going to happen until after 2030, if ever. If ever. So WPA is looking for some space and to get in the news cycle now. And so they're talking about some WPA model. So they want, some of the speakers in the WPA, they want people to embrace this issue without studying it and studying its implication. And so that's why I said we are open to cash transfers. We have done cash transfers to selected groups even before oil resources. Like the kids, the 10,000 was a cash transfer to them. That we want to grow the 10,000 per child per year to $50,000 per child per year. That is something we've already decided on, whether we had oil or not, because we believe with the growth in the economy, we can do that. Now, we believe that pensioners or the vulnerable groups should get significant help. But since oil proceeds are one, variable, and the prices fluctuate, any model that will see universal transfer or the basic income approach has to be carefully calibrated. It also has to be variable if it's practiced. And secondly, it must not, it must be sustainable. It can't destroy the rest of the economy through the Dutch disease, etc. And that's why I went at length to talk about the Alaskan model, etc. What they want, what WPA wants, is to go in the communities and say to people, vote APNU, because if you do this, next year you're going to get 5,000 US dollars every household. That's what they want to lie to people. That's all this whole talk about. Because if they themselves said that you can't do this until we get to 1.5 million barrels a day, and we're only going to start producing 120,000 barrels a day, then why make it such a big, hot issue at this time when we're not going to be able to do this until another decade from now? So this is what they want to do, mislead people once again. And so I saw they're so conflicted now because the Ranger, first he had the right instinct to say, we must study this carefully. We must study this carefully. I think they prevailed upon him, the pressure, he had pressure. And so now, even today, they want, I see they want a retraction of the Kiteshore News headline, which accurately reflected what he said. It's such a big turmoil over an issue that will become really a non-issue for the next few years, because if we're going to receive $300 million a year, and you're going to spend a little bit more on our children and education and other things, where is the money going to come from? Where is the money going to come from to create the jobs? We need to find jobs for the 30,000 people who have lost their jobs, over 30,000. And I'm glad that the NIS said that their contributions are dwindling because of a shrinking labor force. Contrast that with what Granger is saying about job creation when he came up with a fictitious number in Linden about some $89 billion of investment for this year alone. $89 billion of investment. So let us make it clear again. This issue should be discussed, it should be debated, but it is an attempt. There is no WPA model. What Clive Thomas did was to submit a proposal that is wholly unsustainable at this point in time. There's simply no money. His proposal would lead to the distribution of $1.1 billion a year, and we're only going to get $300 million a year for the next few years. So but we should keep an open mind to the concept, because it's a global concept, and I think the intention is a good one, to ensure that everybody has at least basic income. So I thought I weigh back in on this issue, seeing the distortions about we endorsed the WPA proposal. We didn't endorse the model. There is no WPA model to endorse. I just wanted to say a few things about the launch of the PNC's campaign in Linden. Well, it's just the big motorcade that you saw going up with hundreds of vehicles was because people in Linden didn't show up for their meeting. And when you look at that, the motorcade and the school kids, that accounted for the people that they had there. And then, so that's one. So saying to them about how Linden's solidarity has been unshakable with Granger. Well, people are very, very dissatisfied. And if Mr. Granger were to go without his big security entourage, like our presidential candidate did, and without all his minions around him, and walk the streets of Linden, he will really come down to the earth about this unshakable solidarity. Because whilst he talks about the phenomenal progress they made over the last few years, people who live there and have a daily grind in Linden understand that their lives have changed for the worse. Cost of living has skyrocketed. This is what we hear from people. 2, there are no jobs. The few job-creating initiatives that we had, that we set up through LENS, because I noticed them talking about LENS and LEAP. Those were initiatives of the PBP to create as incubators of jobs and businesses in Linden and soft loans to people. They have been adopted by APNU, but they have not been resourced by APNU. They have been adopted, the names have been adopted, but not enough adequate resources have been put in there. They have not developed any new housing scheme in Linden. They have not, in fact, they closed down the call center. 80 persons lost their jobs more. So his rhetoric is far, as I said before, doesn't match reality. And imagine a man saying that he wants to continue the Linden, like the project that was done in the past, Linden Highway. How many years? That was built before many of us, in fact, most of the people in this room were alive, they were born. And now that's what he goes back to. He says he wants to stay in office so he could continue doing things like this, that's what they did in the past, the PNC. That was ages ago. And he talks about the Thimeri International Airport. And up to today's paper, I saw trouble with the airport, that Patterson has, well, I deal with Patterson in a moment, but really, the corruption there at the airport is unbelievable. And then he says, look at our record for the last few years. So anyhow, I just don't want to go through all of what he said in Linden. I just don't want to go through because it's too much, and you've heard it before, that he did well, give us another chance. Another chance to do what? To tax people more. They're paying $100 billion more in taxes, so that we can get more buildings painted green, etc. So this was I think it was a failure. Their launch in Linden was a failure. When you have to bus the majority of the crowd in, use school kids, and then resort to the empty rhetoric once again that you used in 2014. Imagine, I would like the people to just go and listen to Granger's speech in 2014, pull up some of them, and you will in fact, in the last decade, from around 2010, when he was in opposition, and see if anything much has changed. It's almost the same thing he says today, although he's had 4.5 years in office already as president. Nothing, you can expect nothing new from him. Now, there are just a couple of things more. I saw the big story now about the government investigating the cameos, and the exchange rate has not moved, and there is adequate currency in the system and stuff like that. And one story which says you can buy currency at 215 and 216. So I would urge all the Guyanese who need currency, foreign currency, since the Minister of Finance and the Governor of the Central Bank claim that you can get the notes at this price because there is enough reserve, 215 and 216, that when you go to the banks or the cambio and they don't sell you or they don't have the money, go to the Ministry of Finance and give Jordan or Gobind Ganga your 215 and 216 and ask them to get the currency for you. You can go over there because since they're the ones who are showing people that they can find the money easily in the system. So that is all what I'm going to say about this, because it's patently false that they're saying. There is a problem in the market. And it would have been worse had there been a growth spurt in the economy, because the demand for transaction would have been higher. So I'm now going to go after what Nagamutu said now in his usual thing. Guyana's democracy is safe and stable. We had a 4.5% growth. That 2010, that the PPP had put the sugar industry on the divestment block. It's not them. That they reduced the VAT, not that they extended it to water, electricity, medical services, data, foodstuff, etc. All of these things in the la la land that they live. He's now blaming us for everything, that we did all of this. So that brings me to one other issue before I move on. I noticed that the president says he's unbothered by the protests and everything else. But you should see the questionnaire. I'm sure you saw the questionnaire that the police used in asking the leadership of the GMSA what took place at the meeting. In fact, the investigation. They were supposed to go into the police. Imagine a private sector organization arranges an activity, sells tickets for people to go. The Granger shows up there. Some people protested at the activity. Didn't harm him, they protested. He called them hooligans too. They protested. And then the police now invites in the leadership of the GMSA to go in to face a barrage of questions. So I will share this with you, but one of the questions was, how does the GMSA view His Excellency the President's speech as it relates to the invitation extended to him? So the answer to them should have been, it was a waste of time. His speech was useless. As I wish they had asked me these questions. It's some of the most nonsensical questions that you've ever seen. You know, this is a farce comedy when the police are being directed to do things that they have no business doing and they don't want to do. So the people got to tell him how they viewed his speech now. Was it a great speech? Rank it from 1 to 10. It should get 0 for content. 0 for content. And he should get highest marks for dictatorship. And but that brings me to, it's these things. You know, when this happens, you realize how far you are sliding as a society. So that brings me to the GNBA too. We have had to file a case, the Freedom Radio, against GNBA. So that's another APNU group out there, APNU AFC group, and they're trying to muzzle free speech. So guess what? We were fined $75,000 for calling Granger a charlatan. You can call him a dictator, but not a charlatan. You get fined $75,000. So Granger is a charlatan. He is a charlatan. What do you expect people to call him? And that's not the most egregious thing that we could call him, but you get fined. They fine Freedom Radio. They want to police what we say on Freedom Radio. We can't talk about elections being rigged when we realize what the game was at the GCOM. Their game was at GCOM. They were planning to rig the elections. And even now, Mr. Lowenfield is trying to prevent international help from going into GCOM. I know the UNDP has offered assistance in the IT area, and that's an area that we badly need assistance in, to have oversight over the registration, the tabulation, the quality of the list, etc. And when he met with the people, he said, I don't need help in that area. I need help in media monitoring. So he's trying to prevent, even now, international assistance from going into the secretariat where it matters, where it's not going to succeed. But we can't say that on the Freedom Radio, that they're attempting to tamper with or rig the elections, because then we will be fined $75,000. Well, we will challenge this, but these are all features. They may look isolated, but they're all features of a state in decline, a state in paranoia. When a president who is unbothered has to walk around, drive around with a busload of riot squad people following him, and he's unbothered. And he's unbothered by what happened at GMSA, but he gets the police now to invite the executives of the GMSA. And he's unbothered by our comments about him, but he gets another group of people to try to prevent free speech. This is the decline. So this brings me to one issue. I know I've noticed that a tape has been going around circulated by some elements in APNU. That's where it originated. And therefore, I needed to address it today. So, the tape proves that, and let me say to people, I do get angry. And let me say to them again, when I get angry, sometimes I use expletives. And I am sorry that people had to be exposed to that, because APNU illegally recorded this, and they circulated it. It was done in a private setting. But I believe, so I'm really sorry that the public had to hear what took place in a private setting. What they will never find me in a private setting doing is pushing racism, like Valda Lawrence did when they taped her. Or you're not going to hear me deal with anything that tries to divide our people or harm our country. So let me apologize to all the viewers who have had to hear that. But I thought it necessary to tell you also the context of the discussion I've had. So on the day that the PNC had its rally, I was told that Chris Gale had gone up to Linden and was walking around with Harmon. And then some people who were friends of Chris Gale and called my office to say that when they spoke with Chris Gale indicated that he is not supporting any party. And they said to me that there are especially two individuals who pushed Chris Gale into going to Linden, thinking that he was going into a community activity, but they knew that it was an APNU event and that Harmon was in touch with them to get Chris Gale to walk around with him. They did not tell Chris Gale about that it was the context in which he was going into Linden. So these two individuals subsequently called my office. Incessantly they were calling. They sent people over here to meet with me all day long, a busy day. There were tons of people coming over and saying, no, they didn't do it, etc. And I knew they were lying. So they're sending messages, my own staff included, coming to tell me they didn't do it. And I was angry because, one, the people of Guyana would believe that somehow Chris Gale endorsed APNU, and I know Chris Gale would not endorse any party in this country. Secondly, they would damage Chris Gale's fan base and credibility. And if they were friends of Chris Gale, they should have never done that to him, because they would damage his credibility among people. And it already had started online. So, and they claimed to be his friends. So when they kept calling my office, I wasn't in any mood to talk to them. And so when people said to me, oh, he's a great friend and stuff, I use these expletives that they are in my bad book. That was what happened in a private setting in my office. As I said, what is even more worrying is about why would APNU be so desperate as to use this? In fact, they should be ashamed that they misled Chris Gale into going into Linden because they could not muster a crowd on their own. They were advertising, come and meet Chris Gale, because nobody wanted to shake Harmon's hand and the others. They're just like walking down the street like homeless people. And then when Chris Gale went there, he created a buzz, so they were walking behind him. They should be ashamed of doing that, misleading a sporting personality into going into such an environment where they knew it will damage his standing among his fans. And the fans cut across Guyana, they cut across politics, race, etc. Chris Gale has tons of fans in Guyana. And so they should be ashamed of that. But they chose to do this, but in a way to make that public, thinking that somehow it will damage me. I'm sorry people had to hear that. because it was in a private setting, but, and it's not meant to disrespect anyone, but that's how I felt that day. That's how I really felt that day, that I was angry about it, and I do get angry, and as I said, sometimes when I do, I sometimes use expletives. So, thank you.
Gordon Mosley, sir, the pick up right where you left off. If I gather you correctly, you were angry and you used expletives because a cricketer near retirement is in a town walking around with your political opposition. Is that the gist of what triggered your foul display? And can you confirm too, sir, that the PPP through the PYO offered to sponsor the Chris Gayle event that was held that same Saturday night, and that did not go as planned, and that was actually the root of your anger? Could you say that the PPP did not offer sponsorship in that event?
As I said before, I expected the Chronicle to carry that line, but it comes from a particular direction, the repetition of the lies, and now I see the talking points have been shared with many people. So let me say to you, the PYA doesn't have money to host the Chris Gayle activity. In fact, what I'm hearing, and I am in charge of the People's Progressive Party, I know of no such offer by the PYO to host any activity, the Saturday night activity. In fact, the activity was, at the bottom of it says, powered by the government.
So isn't that the gist of your answer?
No.
The government over you, the organizers of that event.
Oh, really?
The government for sponsorship.
No, because we never offered that. That's what you're saying, that it is the gist of the argument, as though there was an alternate offer. We can't.
The PPP never
No. People's Progressive Party never offered to fund any activity at the convention center. So that, and you're hearing it from me. So not the rumor mill or the Chronicle. I'm speaking on behalf of the PP. One, we will not do this, and two, we don't have the resources. Our resources are now used on the campaign. Secondly, that thing about government powered, we expected that to happen because some of the individuals are close to Harman who are arranging the activities. They didn't need help from the PPP. In fact, I would like to know how much money the government put into the activity. Did the government put money into the activity? That should be your question. Because until now, you've never asked how much money they spent on the Buju Banton show. We know it's $82 million. You should ask about that. That's taxpayers' money. And how much did they, powered by the government, cost the taxpayers of this country? We in the PPP, we don't have those resources. And secondly, we never made an offer to fund any activity of that sort. That's a lie. That's being peddled by the Guyana Chronicle, which is the new nation of Guyana. Chronicle has absolutely no credibility, fabricates stories all the time. They fabricated a story that in the meeting was a voice sounding like Bobby Ramroop. In the meeting with me, when they heard that, they fabricated that too, because they want to link Ramroop to the activity. That's a fabrication in today's Chronicle. What was the earlier point?
No, I was asking about why would you then be angry at this cricketer who has been hosted by you in the past at dinner?
No. So it had nothing to do with that. It had absolutely nothing to do with that. Because I know Chris Gayle will never endorse any side.
But he didn't.
Yeah, and that is precisely. Imagine the imagery with Harman. Why on that day they chose, these two individuals chose to carry Chris Gayle at the same moment. Guyanese are not stupid, Gordon Mosley. These two individuals could have arranged to take Chris Gayle to a community activity another day, the Sunday. They planned it in a way that on the same day when APNU is having its launch, at the same moment when Harmon is there waiting to walk around, Chris Gayle, they had a vision, you know, they're clairvoyant, and then Chris Gayle arrives there to walk around with Harmon. No, that's the essence of the matter. Forget.
Chris Gayle is a 40-year-old man
Yes.
who was celebrating his 40th birthday around that time. You know, you're making it sound as if this was a child being led astray.
No.
It's a
The thing
40-year-old
is that
man.
the 40-year-old man, blame Chris Gayle now, not about these two individuals who arrange it. So people are not stupid. Even the APNU people would see how hollow your arguments are. That Chris Gayle was taken now to a community activity, but this community activity was done on the same day, at the same time when Harmon appeared on the scene to walk down the road. This is, let me tell you what it was about. It was, these individuals are close to Harmon. They're getting perks from Harmon. The individuals who arranged this. They recognize that APNU cannot get people in Linden to come out. They needed a person to attract people to come out, like they have done with other artists around the world, like Buju Banton, etc. Nobody wants to show up to an APNU event. The youth event they had at Parade Ground was a disaster. Young people are not going to buy into this nonsense anymore. So they need sports personalities. But rather than say to Chris Gayle, oh, you're going there for the APNU rally, they misled him into thinking he was going there for a community event surrounding his 40th anniversary. So and then they advertise it there, come and meet Chris Gayle at the same time when APNU has its activity.
Why does it anger you so much? What business is it of yours who Chris Gayle...
Why were they calling my office incessantly to lie to me? The same individuals.
So why would they be calling your office?
Because they wanted to play both sides. They're scared because they know government will change. That's what they're scared of. They know the government will change. So these same individuals who I know organize it and misled Chris Gayle were calling here incessantly, bringing people to message. I didn't want to talk to them. So that is why I was furious too, that they were calling me constantly. I had a busy day. Normally my days are busy. I don't want to listen to people who I know are lying. So that was what worked me up, because all morning they were calling. They sent people over here. They're calling my staff. They called me. I said, I'm not taking calls.
And you said, sir,
so it was, so
you're
you're happy. Right.
You're now placing those persons in your black book. What does it mean to be in the Jagdeo Black Book?
Jagdeo Black Book? It means that any privilege that you have, like when some of these individuals, I know them. And so they call me from time to time, talk to me, etc. That means that privilege is gone.
Because they took
The privilege is gone, yes.
Because they took Chris Gayle to
Because they misled him. They misled him and then sought to lie to me. They sought to lie to me that they were not part of it. That's why. They not only misled him, which could have damaged his reputation, but then sought to lie to me that they did it. All right, that's it. You came here for that. I think I've spoken enough about it. Yeah.
I'm trying to understand the leader of the opposition, the longest serving president that this country has seen, concerning himself with two friends who took Chris Gayle to town to meet with people. Why does it concern you so
You've
much?
already shifted it back to concerning myself. I'm talking.
The persons in your black book.
No, these.
You said it. They're now in your black book. So
yeah.
why are they there now?
Yes. Anyhow, mostly the thing is that I'm human. I'm human. I am human. I can become angry when people, liars, call me all the time and bother me on a busy day, and I know they're lying. I can get angry too. I'm human, and that's it. So and I use expletives sometimes when I'm angry. You understand that? Because they were lying to me, to call me all day long.
Mr. Jagdeo, the IMF has advised government to make asset declarations to the Integrity Commission public. Are you open to that?
Yes, but the IMF, this is all gaffe from the IMF too. The last time I came here, the same McIntyre, I spoke about the non-declaration by the government, the gap of 3 years. They didn't put it in their report. Why is he calling now for it to be made public? I support this. I pointed out to him the motion that we had in Parliament to make public our declarations for the past 10 years. He knows about all of this. Mr. McIntyre just talking all the time, and then they do a cover-up report to the board of the IMF. None of the issues we talk about, the massive corruption that hemorrhages public revenue, and also the expenditure where you have massive corruption in public expenditure. Did they report? Put in a report about the lack of accountability, the violation of the procurement laws, the Integrity Commission, a whole range of things we spoke about. And none of that gets reflected in their report. It's a waste of time for us to meet with them. It's a waste of time to meet with them. Look at Patterson. I saw now he admitted the lift is not working. He admitted, well, he didn't admit as yet, he lied about the road to the interior. But if you go through all Patterson's projects have been either a failure or corrupt. All of Patterson's activities. So when I hear these things about make public, we took a motion to the Parliament to do exactly that, and this government voted against it.
And Mr. Ramkitan, who could be our next Prime Minister, he has said...
I notice it's conditional. Could be. That's up to Granger. He couldn't be the Prime Minister. He could be the candidate because they're losing the elections.
He's expressed his support for giving the Commission independence by making it a constitutional body. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, you know how they respect the Constitution. Whether you make it a constitutional body or not, what you have to do is to submit your declarations to the Integrity Commission. Submit it. Let's start with just that. Put in file your declarations. They're not doing that, and they want to make it a constitutional body. So I saw some of the other parties are saying, oh, Granger is walking all over the Constitution, so let's write a new Constitution. How does that solve the issue of compliance?
But do you not think that would give the body some...
And we're open to any idea that will strengthen the Integrity Commission. However, this is just to get a nice sounding word or phrase to avoid scrutiny of the real issue. And the real issue is their non-compliance with the Integrity Commission, the laws.
Could you provide evidence of... You're saying that Law and Field is trying to prevent international help currently from going to...
I've been speaking with a number of people. For example, I know that UN has offered assistance in the IT area for ages. Now, since 2 years ago, I'm aware that they renewed that offer. I'm aware that Lowenfield presented to the Commission as though the only offer from UNDP has been on the media assistance, that media monitoring, when he himself, in a meeting, said that he didn't need assistance on the IT.
Sir, could you say...
All right, let me get this guy first, and then I come back.
Mr. Jagdeo, we've been hearing a lot about free education from Marshall George. But the Constitution says something as reality is different. How do we get to that?
That's why we said it has to be phased. You saw our promise on the university level.
We said... I meant how did we get to it not being free? But it's free in the Constitution.
Yeah, but there are lots of things. I think it's a goal. It's a goal for everyone, but you can't, for example, The goal has to be implemented through programs and resources and projects. So although, for example, there are many declarative statements in the Constitution, like full employment and a whole range of things, but you're not going to reasonably get to that in a few years. So you have declarative statements in the Constitution that you work towards. I think maybe if it's challenged in court, it would be an interesting ruling. But I see it more declarative. You can't just say it and it happens. You have to actually work towards it.
I think the question that my colleague meant to ask was, it was actually free, and then someone added a cost. So how
would we get to that? Right?
So yes, it was free, but over the years, but there was a time in the 80s that Burnham said free education, and then the economic circumstances of the country changed, and then from the Hoyt era upwards, you started having the state not having enough resources. Remember, at one stage we were declared uncreditworthy to borrow. We're using 153% of revenue to service debt. When a country does that, what do you have to invest in education, etc.? You either hang on to the declaration and make everything free with it being zero, or you allow other people to invest in the sector. And so that is where the economic circumstances of the country change. We had a lot of things like feed, clothe, and house the nation, free education in that period. A lot of that was underpinned by what happened in the 70s, when bauxite prices were high, sugar prices were high, etc. And they built programs around high prices that never lasted. And then the debt started accumulating. So at a certain stage, the debt was over 900% of GDP. And they couldn't pay the debt. You're declared uncreditworthy. And that's when most things slid. We had triple-digit inflation. Teachers were not paid for sometimes months. The salary for a teacher became less than 25 US dollars. It was just 3,000 odd when the exchange rate was like 120 something to one. Teachers, you remember that period when teachers used to have to go to Trinidad and bring in stuff to sell and all of that when you had prohibited items and stuff. So you can't divorce where we are today from our economic history. Often you track the economic history of the country, and then you will see how it impacted on various policies, the economic history. They're closely aligned. And this is why we started off by saying, all right, here are some limits that we can do. As we started paying off the debt, we started expanding now the cash grant to school kids, etc. So once you get rid of the debt, then you can spend more back on the country. That was how it was. Yes, go on.
Is the party going to be hosting any Congress before the elections, the PP?
That's a matter for the EXCO, but right now we're focused on winning the elections.
But there's not been one since 2016?
No, it's 3 years, and we're still within, yes. We're still within the time. We haven't passed the 3 years, as I said.
Sir, on the prime ministerial candidate on your side, any movement in that direction? Are there like a number of people you narrowed down possibilities?
No. We outlined the process, and we outlined the nomination process. So who you can nominate people, then where the meetings will take place, the discussions, and where the selection will take place.
Must that person come from the civic component, or are you open to it being from the 3P also?
Generally, it's from the civic. Generally, it's from the civic.
How does one Edgel stand? Is he a front runner?
He has more credibility. Should I spell out the word credibility than Granger? Not. Yes. More than Granger. Granger called him what? In London.
But is he someone being considered?
I don't know who will be the person. I can't tell you that. We'll have a number of people, I suspect, being nominated, and then the discussions will take place, and at the end, the party will choose. So I'll be really out of line if I tell you who will be nominated. I don't know as yet.
What are you looking for, though, in a candidate for your prime ministerial position?
Well, those are some of the criteria that we outlined internally, but clearly people who have work ethic for me, a good work ethic, who are familiar with who can implement things, who wouldn't be there just because in a sinecure position, who could actually do work. Prime Minister Samuel Hines didn't get a lot of credit because people, the APNU, disparage him. But on a daily basis, he dealt with weighty issues. I'm telling you, Sam dealt with tons of issues in the difficult period in the GPL, when we had to move from 1 week of blackout, a whole week when you had blackout, to taking it where it was by the time we left office, and new investments and all of that. He was critical to that. He was critical to some of the changes in the mining sector. So he worked very hard. Although people say disparaging things about him, but he was a hard worker. We need candidates who can work, not like a Nagamutu, a waste of time person, or Ramjatan who believes he's doing a great job. In fact, I heard he's in depression now. Can you confirm that, Mosley, from your meetings at Congress Place?
Don't have meetings there.
Oh, you don't have meetings?
Here, so what going on?
Okay, all right. They don't. You don't need to go. They just call you.
I couldn't even get ads.
Okay. Well, you get your payment elsewhere. You don't need the ads. You get the payment from other sources. All right. Thank you very much.